All right, so let's get started. Thank you for joining our webinar. I'm going to start with some housekeeping items. So first of all, this will be a 45-minute session, including a demo and Q&A. There's a Q&A box available to you as part of the webinar. Use that throughout the webinar to ask any questions you have. We do have a panelist of our professional consultants standing by to answer those questions. Some of those questions they'll answer via text during the webinar. Some of those questions they'll pass forward to the presenters to answer live at the end. Whether or not your question gets answered during the webinar, we will be consolidating all of the questions and posting the questions and answers online. We're recording the presentation, and then a couple days from today, you're going to get an email with both the recording and a link to the consolidated Q&A. At the end of the webinar, you're going to get a link to a feedback survey. Please do take the survey. Tell us how we did, what you liked, what we need to work on, and what we should cover in future webinars. Now I want to get started with some introductions. My name is Ann Campbell. I am a coder. I'm a leader in the SonarSource community. So if you've been to the community, we've probably interacted. And I'm a SonarSourcer since 2013. I'm joined today by Nicolas Bontoux. He's a SonarSourcer since 2015. He started with the company as a support engineer, and today we work together in product marketing. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Nico.
Thank you, Anne, for the introductions, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Very happy to be here to talk about the LTS 8.9, which we at SonarSource usually refer to as the best LTS ever. Rest assured, this is actually how we call any new LTS. So really happy to go through this together. We have a pretty good agenda, and we're going to start by giving a quick refresher on what we actually mean by LTS. Concept I'm sure most of us are familiar with, but just want to recap a little bit what it entails and what's the deep meaning for us and for the entire community. And then most of the presentation, we want to talk about features. This is why we're all here today. Plenty of new functionality and great new features in this LTS. We'll have 20-25 minutes on this. You'll see a recap, you will see a demo, you will see it in the product. So we really want to max out on this today. And then a couple of next steps. And as Anne mentioned, we'll take the time for taking in questions and giving some answers to those. So let's dive in with the LTS, this little acronym, which I'm sure most of you know stands for long-term support. But the reason I want to take a minute on this is that the meaning is actually a little more deep for us and for SonarSource and for our community. It really ties back to our delivery lifecycle for SonarQube, where we continuously maintain 2 versions. The latest is what we regularly update roughly every 2 months. So you might be used to every 2 months see a new version being released and announced on sonarcube.org with new functionality. And one of those versions gets to be the LTS roughly every 18 months. So a much longer life cycle, which is really intentional from our end to answer specific needs from organizations that have more expectations towards stability. They don't necessarily want to upgrade every 2 months. They want rather stability for their infra, for their environment, for their operations, and also stability for their user experience, for their teams that are getting onboarded in SonarQube. So this is really intentional. And at the same time, the latest is going to remain a go-to for a good chunk of the community that is going to continuously upgrade to get those latest functionalities and features. And the contract being that anytime there's a new version, jump onto that latest version. Combining all of this together, and long story short, a new LTS is both at the same time the latest version and the LTS. So it's really a must-have. Whatever angle you look at it, you must consider this upgrade. It's really the go-to version as of today. And I will illustrate this a little bit with a few dates. We are here in May 2021. We launched the 8.9 earlier this month. You may be operating the previous LTS, which we launched July 2019. That is now in its end-of-life period, given that there's a new LTS. And so are all those intermediary versions that maybe some of you have been running at some point, and they are also end-of-life, given that there are newer versions since then. Looking forward, you can expect a 9.0 to come, and much further down the road, a new LTS. Again, a long way from here, late 2022. But again, whatever way you look at it, you have your go-to version right now, which is this LTS. And hopefully you all understand that those previous versions, are no longer maintained. And once you are on the LTS, you will ultimately get to make a choice of, do you want to stay on that for stability expectations in terms of your environment, or are you okay to continuously follow with the latest and greatest features? So that's it for the concepts of the LTS, generally speaking. And now I want to talk about the 8.9 LTS specifically and those great features that are in it. We launched this earlier this month. You might have already seen plenty of heads up on our website, our announcement, and all of our resources there. A quick point I want to clarify very simply is that this is a free version upgrade. Whatever version of SonarQube you're running, whatever edition you're running, there's no questions asked. This is just a few clicks away in terms of downloading it and using it in your environment. So again, really a no-brainer from that perspective. But the perspective we want to focus on is really what's in this LTS. And like I said, we have plenty of features to talk to you about. And you'll hear us talk about features that will be valuable for teams that are already using, but also for teams that may have not considered in the past, but now there's new functionality and new coverage that they want to give it a closer look. And we'll also talk about features for the organization as a whole. And so before I hand over to Anne, in terms of diving in, I will just introduce what we're going to start with. And we want to start with developers, features for developers. This is at our heart. This is in our DNA almost at SonarSource, that we make developer first products. And I want to take a minute to explain why that is so important to us. The reason for that is because our mission is to help you with your code quality and code security. And in that mission, we believe there's actually no more powerful way of doing that than giving powers to the developers. We believe that in terms of ownership, in terms of impact, but especially in terms of long-term impact, really the most powerful way is to empower developers with this. There may be other ways, but if you look at it long-term, getting this in the hands of the developers is going to be truly powerful. And so what we're going to start with is, how are we enabling this, and what are this new functionality that really help us provide this feedback as early as possible in the developer workflow, directly in the hands of the developers as they write and submit their code. And with that, I will hand over to Anne.
Thanks, Nico. So starting with developers, developer first, I'm going to start with where developers live. Obviously, developers live in the IDE, but you also live in your DevOps platform. And so what I want to start by pointing out is the logos on this slide. So we've got the logos here of the 4 major DevOps platforms, as well as icons for cloud and server. The takeaway here is that we've given you deep DevOps platform integrations for all 8 variations. So to be super explicit about this, github.com, GitHub Enterprise, Azure DevOps Server, Azure DevOps Services, Bitbucket, Bitbucket Cloud, GitLab, and GitLab Self-Hosted. So the things I'm about to talk about apply to all 8 variations here. And in the chronology of your project in relation to SonarQube, we start with project import. So what you can now do in 8.9 is configure your DevOps platform into SonarQube. So then from SonarQube, you can look into your DevOps platform. You can see the projects that are there in your DevOps platform, and you can choose which projects you want to import into SonarQube. What that does is pre-configure those projects into SonarQube. And then from there, we give you tailored tutorials to give you the proper configuration to set up your analysis. And we've done this for most of the major configurations. So GitHub Actions, Azure Pipelines, GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket Server with Jenkins, GitLab with GitLab CI. And then since there are some language specific things that you need to do for .NET and C and C++, there are tutorials for those as well. The next thing here is that once you've got that tailored analysis configuration for your setup, you're kind of done, because now in most situations we read out of the environment whether or not we're in a branch or PR context, and we're going to automatically inject the values that we need to do in those contexts to give you the correct analysis of your branch and configuration. So then once you've got your branch and configuration and general analysis correctly configured, then we come to pull request analysis on steroids. So the thing to note here is that in 7.9, we had PR analysis and decoration for GitHub, but we didn't have it on the discussion tab in GitHub Enterprise. We've added that in GitHub Enterprise, and we've given you pull request analysis and decoration in the other 7 variations. So github.com, Azure DevOps Services Server, etc. The other thing here is that we've got monorepo analysis in all 8. So, and specifically, that's analysis of PRs on monorepos. Those are going to be correctly marked up in your DevOps platform. Beyond that, we've simplified the branch concept, so there's no more confusion around a long-lived or a short-lived branch. There's just a branch. We've given you an Enterprise Edition the ability to configure multiple DevOps platform instances. So if for some reason in your organization you have, say, 2 instances of GitHub Enterprise, you can configure those into SonarQube. We've given you GitLab authentication. Now we've made sure that the main branch name matches between SonarQube and your DevOps platform, so there's no more confusion about develop versus master. And finally, last but very much not least, we've given failed pipelines for everyone. People have been asking us for this for quite a while. We've finally come around. Now everyone can set up a failed pipeline. Beyond that, moving into the code quality area, we've expanded our C++ offering with rules, more compilers, better performance. So specifically for C++ 17, we've added rules that help you write to that language standard version. We've given you rules for all of the C++ core guidelines that we felt like were statically checkable. And we've added automatic standard switching. So we do have already rules for C++ 11. And if you've got a project in your house that's C++ 11 and then another one for C++ 17, you'll no longer have to manage different profiles for those. You can throw all of the rules you're interested in into one profile, and we're going to turn those rules off and on based on the version of the standard that you're compiling to. We've given you some faster analysis options with caching and parallel analysis. We've expanded our compiler support a lot. I'm not even going to try and rattle that off. They're all listed on our websites, so if you're interested in that, go check it out. And finally, we've added SonarLint for CLion. That's in addition to SonarLint for Visual Studio. Both of these are free ways to try our C++ rules. So if you're interested in this, but you haven't given it a try yet, that's a great way to get started with those rules and check them out. Moving on to Python support, we've expanded our Python support. Now in 7.9, our support for Python was importing Pylint reports. In 8.9, we've given you the same experience for Python that we provide for all of the other languages we support, which is fast, accurate, native analysis with sane defaults. In that, we've gone to great lengths to give deep support for Python language structures and the common frameworks, and that's through Python 3.9. There are lots of rules that we offer out of the box, and you have the ability to ensure a smooth transition because we still do import Pylint reports. We've added the import of Flakeb and Bandit reports. And if there's some rule out there that we don't provide that you need, you have the ability to write that for yourself with custom rule support. Now, there's a lot more in the LTS than we're going to be able to cover in this webinar. There are some specific things I do want to pick out and bring to your attention. Starting with the new code-focused project homepage. For a very long time, SonarSource has said that what's most important is quality on new code. And in 8.9, we've given you a new project homepage that focuses purely on new code. Your overall values are still available, but when you come to your project, what you're seeing is the quality gate status and your new code values, and I'm going to show you that in a second. We've also given you rules about test code quality. So another thing that we've emphasized at SonarSource is test code coverage. But if you have high coverage with bad tests, in the end, what you have is a false sense of security. So we've given you rules in Java, PHP, and C# to make sure that those tests are good tests. We've also given you some rules to test your regular expressions. And in writing and in testing these rules, what we realized was that it turns out to be far easier than I think anyone ever realized to write your regular expressions badly. And so now in Java, you have the rules to detect that and help you fix it. For applications, we've made that available in all commercial editions. Previously, applications started in Enterprise Edition. We've moved that aggregation into Developer Edition for everyone. Now, as a quick review, an application is a synthetic project. It's an aggregation of a set of projects that ship together. If one of those projects is not shippable, none of them is shippable. And with an application, you have an aggregated quality gate. So you have one place to look at and know whether your set of projects is shippable. As a synthetic project, we've moved that to the projects page. Just makes more sense there. So that becomes easier to use as well as more generally available. And finally, we've made sure to update all of the analyzers to parse the latest versions of the languages. Now, moving on from there, I want to get into code security. And the thing that I want to point out here is the artwork that we developed for the announcement for this section of the LTS. And I want to point out that if I were showing you this artwork for 7.9, there would only be 3 language logos on it: Java, C#, and PHP. In the interim, we've added 5 more languages as security languages. So Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, C, and C++. In the doing, we've put a lot of work into the underlying analyzer so that we've made sure that it's better, faster, stronger. And we've added a whole bunch of rules, not just to the brand new languages, but to the existing languages as well. That's given us extensive OWASP top 10 coverage for all of our languages. For Java, C#, and Python, we've got something in every OWASP top 10 category. And for PHP, TypeScript, JavaScript, C, and C++, we've got extensive support of OWASP top 10. Beyond OWASP top 10, in C and C++, we've added buffer overflow detection in POSIX functions. Now, I'm not quite sure where that fits into OWASP top 10, but if you're familiar with C and C++, you'll recognize this as being significant, whether or not it's in the top 10. Beyond that, we've done work to give you deep language structure support in all of the security languages, as well as deep framework support. So for the common frameworks that are used in those languages, and to make the rules themselves existing and new, and the issue flows more precise. All of this is towards the goal of making sure that when we raise a vulnerability on your code, you can be confident that there's actually something you need to fix. And you can be sure that we're giving you the most pertinent information to help you understand how you got to the point of having an issue and what you need to work on to fix it. Now, that's in contrast to security hotspots. In 7.9, we did have security hotspots. In 8.9, we've segregated them away from issues because they are a different thing. A security hotspot is not necessarily a vulnerability. A security hotspot is a use of a security-sensitive piece of code, which may or may not be a problem depending on the surrounding context. So in 8.9, we've given you a specialized UI to triage and review those security hotspot issues. Understand when it's just fine and you can move on, or something that you really need to deal with. And I'll show you that in a second. We've also given you deeper IDE integration with SonarLint. So from the SonarQube interface, you have the ability to open a security hotspot in your IDE. And then in your IDE, you have the ability to sync in taint analysis issues into the IDE. Now, I want to be super clear here because if you're familiar with SonarLint, you're aware that most of our rules run automatically in the IDE. The thing about taint analysis issues is that they require a broader view of the project as a whole than we want to take in the IDE, because doing so would slow down the developer experience. And so rather than degrade your experience as a developer, we make the choice not to run those rules in the IDE, but instead give you the ability in connected mode to pull those issues in from SonarQube. And finally, we have taint analysis configuration. Now in 7.9, we already had taint analysis configuration, but in 8.9, we moved that into the UI so you can configure it at both project and global levels. And that makes it easier to manage. Now, again, for clarity here, taint analysis configuration is not something that most people are going to do. Taint analysis configuration is available starting in Enterprise Edition because it's when you're in that kind of situation that you've been developing for the web for long enough that you started before there were frameworks. And so you had to hand roll getting data from the user or storing data in the database. And so you're doing those things with non-standard functions that you need to tell the taint analysis about so that we can avoid raising false positives and also false negatives. So the next part I want to do is a demo, and I'm going to start in SonarQube itself. So here we are on that brand new project homepage that I was telling you about. Top left, I have the quality gate status. So that's, the first thing I'm going to notice on the page. I immediately know whether or not my code is releasable. And if it's not, I'm going to know why here in the bottom of this block. Now, next to that, I have my new code values. We're looking at a demo project that's not actively being developed. So there's not actually any new code, which is why I have only zeros here. Under normal circumstances, this would probably be non-zero, at least to show the coverage and the duplications. Your projects are perfect, so you're going to have zeros for all the rest of it. But for coverage and duplications, there would be numbers. You do still have access to overall code values. Those are right here. And I'm going to jump into the vulnerabilities because I want to take the opportunity to show you once again the fabulous issue presentation that, to be fair, we had in 7.9. But I'm showing you this with a brand new language, JavaScript. So this is a JavaScript taint analysis vulnerability in a slightly stale copy of the Juice Shop project. And again, we give you an interface to track issues, not just from method to method, but also file to file, so you can get the deep understanding you need to be able to fix the issue properly. All right, so having shown off again our great issue interface, I'm going to move into the Security Hotspot interface, which is actually new in 8.9. So this is our dedicated interface for triaging, reviewing, understanding security hotspots. On the left here, I have a priority sorted list of all of the unreviewed hotspots. Let me just collapse this so you can get a little bit better idea. And re-expand it. So I'm automatically taken to the first one in the list. I've got here the issue in the context of the code, and below that I've got some information to help me assess what's going on here. So what could go wrong if there's actually a problem here? Do I actually have a problem in my context? If I do, what do I need to do to fix it? From there, I've got some actions I can take. So I can say, oh, this is safe, and move on, and let's just show that. So I'm going to mark this safe, and what it's going to do is close that one, takes it out of the interface. I no longer have to worry about it. It automatically presents me the next hotspot that needs review. And then the other thing I wanted to show you was opening the issue in the IDE. So, let's say that this one's a problem and I decide that I need to fix that. I can use this button to open in the IDE, and we're going to show you a poll here in a second about SonarLint. So I've clicked the button. Now it's telling me I can switch to my IDE. So let me tab wrangle here. All right, and I need to zoom in a little bit. All right, so here I am at that same piece of code that I was just looking at SonarQube. And I've got my security hotspot information here. So I've got my message, and I've got the same educational information available to help me diagnose, decide whether there's a problem, and fix it if I need to do that. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you here in the IDE was pulling in taint analysis issues. So again, I do have a list of all of the open issues here in the file that I've got open, and I'm going to start with cognitive complexity because it's a favorite of mine. So I've got my secondary locations to show me what contributes to the issue. But I also have the ability to see all of the taint analysis vulnerabilities that are in this file. And I've got the ability to get to the same flow information that I was just looking at in SonarQube. So I can see that my flow starts here in server.js, just like I did when I was in SonarQube. And then the value, so here I am getting the value from the user, propagate the value, and then actually use the value. So that's a nice interface interaction that we've given you with SonarQube and SonarLint. So now I want to jump back into SonarQube to show you, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here. Nico's going to talk to you more about reports in just a second, but while I'm live, I did want to take the opportunity to show you the security reports. So in 7.9, we did already have security reports. In 8.9, we've expanded that. So we've added the CWE top 25 reports, and we've added 2 versions of those reports, 2019 and 2020. We felt like this was worth doing side by side because the 2 different reports have a different granularity and focus. And so these really are good together. We have deprecated the SANS top 25 report, but it's still available. And we've added the ability to download your report as a PDF. I pre-downloaded this, so I can just jump over to this tab and show you. I've got an overview, and then I've got the most significant reports available in this PDF so that I can print it out to take it into a meeting, hand it around, or if I need to, put it in the filing cabinet. Okay, so now I'm going to jump back to the slides, and I'm going to hand it over to Nico because the next part is his.
Yes, thank you, Anne. Thank you for the great demo. Hopefully you all feel now how feature-packed this LTS really is for developers and dev teams. Like I said, this is what's in our guts. This is what drives us to provide value to developers. And we don't want to stop there. So I want to take a few minutes now to talk about something we're doing on top of that. And that is really to meet organizations' needs on top of delivering value to developers and dev teams. The point here really is that, as much as, and you've seen during the demo, we're driven by providing that feedback to the developers, empowering them to take actions on code quality and code security issues. We totally understand that from an organization perspective, they may be additional requirements, additional expectations in terms of using the product for code quality, for code security, and also as any other product deployed in the environment. So I'm going to go through a couple of those topics that illustrate how we're trying to provide this functionality that is relevant to any enterprise. Starting with this little teaser that Anne gave you, reporting. So you may know it's been a while we offer reporting functionality. We have the portfolio feature set where you can map out your entire software portfolio in SonarQube, get KPIs, get reports, get a good overview and big picture. And now that we are on security and on code security, we have also extended that with the security reporting functionality. So not only providing security feedback to developers with vulnerabilities and security hotspots, but also giving the means to any organizations to track how it's doing against certain standards that Anne talked about, have a look at compliance and risks, again, those standards, and get a bird's eye view of security of the overall portfolio. So I'm not going to reiterate the standards that Anne mentioned, specifically OWASP top 10 and CWE top 25. And this is what you've seen during the demo of how we give this overview. You can drill into each categories and you can understand where the risk is and where you're potentially having a compliance issue or potentially need to dive deeper to understand what's going on. And as we do for any reporting functionality since a while with SonarQube, we offer a PDF export capability simply to answer the real fact that the people that may need those reports and that want to consume this data are not necessarily people that are day in, day out in SonarQube. So you can export this data, export this report, bring it to your security team, bring it to your management team or to broader teams and have a conversation with this on the table and ad hoc out of SonarQube. So that's example number one of enterprise functionality. Example number two is something pretty close to our heart as well, pretty important for us, because we don't just maintain SonarQube, we also run instances of SonarQube ourselves, and we know how important it is to for it to be a good experience for the teams that are running SonarQube in terms of operations and operability, right? So whether it's DevOps teams, infra teams, we think this should be smooth, and they should also get value from these being a nice product to operate. Two examples there. We want to play nice with the infra first. It's been years we support multiple OSs, multiple databases, and we also want to support maybe the greater environment you're in. So perhaps you're using Docker-based environments and deployments. We now provide images, Docker images for all of the editions straight in the Docker Hub. Likewise, maybe some of you are moving or using Kubernetes since a while, and we have that support now through Enterprise Edition, and we even provide a dedicated Helm chart to help deploy SonarQube in a Kubernetes environment. So, pretty natural illustrations there. Again, you can go in the Docker Hub, you can look at the GitHub repo we created with a Helm chart on how to get started with those new methods to deploy SonarQube and install it. And operability to us is not just about deployment, it's also about long-term usage, maintenance, and operations. And so we've done a few things there as well to ease those operations, those routine operations, this routine maintenance. Practical examples again, hot database backups. We now support it with this LTS. Sure enough, it has little to do with code quality and code security. But if you're operating SonarQube, if you're using SonarQube, you will like this capability of being able to back up the data without having to incur any downtime for your users. And you're just kind of ensuring maximum uptime of SonarQube in the DevOps pipeline. And we've also did some nice improvements in terms of reducing the upgrade downtime. There's actually two fronts to this. Sorry. Not only are we doing continuous performance improvements so that the upgrade operations are more efficient in terms of data migration, but we've actually done something new this time also, in the sense that when you upgrade SonarQube, it's going to progressively come back up as the data migration moves forward and completes. So previously you would have had to wait for the very last operation to be finished. And now as the data migration moves forward, the UI is going to come back up. It's going to start taking in analysis reports from the DevOps tool pipeline, and your users will get a sense for the application being available and online while the data migration or the upgrade completes. And so again, minimal downtime for better user experience. So that's what we have for operability. So that was example number 2, if you remember, reporting operability. And I want to talk, take some time to talk about security as well, not code security, which Anne demonstrated pretty nicely, but the security of the infrastructure. I think this is a topic in everybody's mind right now, pretty hot topic. We may have not talked that much about it in the past, but we think we contribute in many ways, and we want to start to be more transparent on this, on what are we doing to contribute to the security of your IT environment. One way, very simple, it ties back to what I talked about, is these LTS and those latest versions, they are the maintained versions of SonarQube. And so by running supported versions, de facto, you're putting yourself in a secure situation where if you have any question or any concern, you will get maximum support from SonarSource. So I cannot emphasize again more that you upgrade to these supported versions. But we've been beyond that, we've done some dedicated work in this 8.x series to, first of all, harden the binaries themselves. There's a lot of technical things involved here, but including work on our own build pipeline and deployment toolchain to really strengthen those binaries and harden them to the maximum. And 2 extra examples I want to talk about is plugins, limiting the potential risks from those. So you know that SonarQube, we offer the ability to extend it with plugins. Most of which are third-party and community-based. And although they do run in the SonarQube environment, they are not vetted by SonarSource in any means, but they do run in the context of SonarQube. And so we really wanted to make sure that those plugins, they strictly consume the API we offer to them, and they do not have means to tamper with the environment or with the installation in other ways. So we've put some effort there, really strengthening this to make sure plugins restrain themselves to the APIs offered by the product, limiting risks for you and for your environment. And We think something that speaks nicely to this is the fact that those Docker images I was talking about earlier on, they have been approved by the US Department of Defense. And this is something we're obviously pretty proud of, but the point is this was not a one-time effort with the DoD. They have a dedicated program called the Iron Bank, where they digitally sign and approve images of either open source or commercial software that have been through a specific process and that adhere to certain requirements. So we've done the investment to meet those requirements, to go through this process with the DoD. We're now part of this Iron Bank, and we think it speaks pretty nicely to our dedication to security and to the fact that those are, again, secure images that you can use in your environment. And I could bring more things, but I just want to mention some simple safeguards, but sometimes it's the simple things that have a big impact. Making sure the admins, they change the default credentials. That's one thing. And also, for example, making sure that by default, SonarQube requires user authentication. And if you're ever to change that for, valid needs, you at least understand explicitly the risk in terms of potentially exposing data and even potentially source code. So that was example number 3, which wraps up. So I talked about reporting, operability, security. These are the enterprise functionality I wanted to talk about of how do we want to also meet organization needs on top of offering value to developers. This brings it all together in the LTS 8.9. Again, you will find the same overview and plenty more resources available online. You will also, for example, see more insights on what comes with which edition. You can look at that online. You can also subscribe to regular updates if you wish to. But again, I really invite you to go check this out. And we're actually going also to kick off a poll just to get a sense of, hey, are you ready to upgrade right now, or do you think you need to prepare this a little bit to get some insights for you? In terms of next steps, pretty straightforward. I, again, cannot invite you more than just go on the downloads page, click, no questions asked, you download the LTS, and you get to practice. And we've shipped some additional resources. There's a nice blog post from our consulting team, which are panelists today, that are showcasing some simple steps for a smooth upgrade to guide you through this, this transition. And don't hesitate to get in touch on our community forum with our professional support. If you've contracted it, we're happy to get involved. We're also eager for feedback, and it's again a must upgrade for everybody. It's plenty of great functionality. So whatever way you engage, be sure that the community and also our support team will be happy to help. So I think that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as you will enjoy this LTS 8.9. And we're going to gently move towards Q&A, and off to you, Anne.
So before we get into the Q&A, I want to make sure we get to the final housekeeping before anyone has to drop off. So you will get a survey. Now, we're putting the link to the survey in the chat, so if you do have to drop off early and you don't get presented the survey automatically, please go ahead and follow the link. Tell us how we did, what we need to work on, what we did well, what you'd like to see in future webinars. We will be emailing you in a few days with the recording and the consolidated Q&A list, and feel free to go ahead and head on over to sonarcube.org and download 8.9 and get started. And so now let's take some questions. Our panelists, our professional consultants have been answering your questions throughout and setting some aside for us to answer live. And so I've got a list over here, so that's why you see me looking to the side. So I want to start with this one for you. Nico, will these new features be available in Sonar Cloud as well?
Yeah, I can say a word on this. So the general answer to is what is in SonarQube, is it available in Sonar Cloud? The general answer is actually no, because those are really separate products in separate context. If you think about everything I talked about operability, this de facto does not apply to SonarQube, which is offered as a service. I think the good takeaway for today is everything you've seen in terms of language analysis, code quality, code security. This is the foundation of what we offer in our 3 products. In fact, even with SonarLint. So yes, you can expect those code quality and code security analysis features to be available. But in the general sense of the term, always keep in mind that different products with different integrations and different needs.
Cool. So next question. I'm running SonarQube 7.9 because it was the latest 3 weeks ago. Is it true that it's already EOL? That's a really great question, and the answer is yes and no. So yes, it's EOL. No, it's not quite fully not supported. We aren't going to be doing any more releases, no more bug fixes, but we will support it for the next 6 months as far as helping you upgrade. So, you know, we're not going to be doing super deep support with this. If you come to me in the community and have some question about how do I do X or why is Y broken, I'm going to tell you upgrade to the latest version. But if you need help getting from 7.9 to 8.9, we'll absolutely support you with that. So next question. Do you recommend upgrading SonarQube constantly with the latest version or only upgrade when it's an LTS version? Nico, you want to take that one?
I can give a quick insight on this one, and we have more resources available actually straight from the downloads page, or we'll link some extra resources. The reality is today, those stability reasons, usually for large organizations, large enterprises, are really a good reason for them to stay with the LTS. But I think the question which you need to ask yourself is, are you in a position where you can actually do those regular updates? And if that is the case, go for it, because you're going to get full support, like for the LTS, and you're going to get plenty of valuable features on a continuous basis. And you know, there's no reason to not jump the train and enjoy this. So if you want more, you know, insights, certainly reach out on the community or look on our website for more detailed guidance. But the general sense of the term is, if you're realistically in a position to do those regular updates, go for it, and it'll be a great experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I saw another question from Andrea that was asking about security hotspots, and I'm happy to give some insights on this. The question is, do you suggest that it's a security team's duty to review hotspots, or do you think it's better to let the developers review them? And here, I'm really excited about these questions, because there's actually a super good reason why we showed security hotspot in the developer first section. It's because the real reason why we've built this is because we want to put it in the hands of the developer teams. It's really made so that first, the devs understand that a vulnerability requires action and a hotspot requires review. So, you know, instead of all mixing in the same bag and getting some mixed feedback of like, oh, this is a false positive, etc., it's very clear from the get-go. And then if you think about the opportunity from security hotspots, I think Anne demonstrated there was some, you know, inline documentation of why is this a risk? What am I supposed to look at? What am I supposed to do? So there's really this opportunity to step by step educate your devs. They will get to learn about security best practices. And so we fully support the fact that this, you know, developers should get acquainted with these features. It might actually be an opportunity to create some exchanges with the security team, which may be more versed into those practices. But the point is the developers get to be exposed to them and to learn from them. So really from the way we've built this and from our recommendation, it's to get developers to consume both vulnerabilities and security hotspots.
Great answer. Thank you. So another question here is, the jump from 7.9 to 8.9 seems to be a big one. Is there some information that summarizes all of the big changes? That's a great question. There have been a lot of changes incrementally between 7.9 and 8.9. We've summarized those in sort of a consolidated upgrade notes document in the docs. You're getting a link to that document in the chat right now, and that will give you sort of topic by topic and version by version the upgrades, the changes, major changes between the two versions. Nico, here's another one for you. When does support end for LTS for 7.9? Sorry.
Yeah, so this one, I think you gave some clues actually when you were talking about the EOL at the end of life for 7.9. So again, there's a new LTS. So don't expect more updates to the 7.9 series. It's no longer going to be actively maintained. And what Anne said is we're totally dedicated to helping the entire community upgrade from the previous LTS to this new LTS. It's in everybody's interest, right? It's in your interest. It's also in our interest that people get the latest and greatest features. So there is going to be this transition period. We will announce, I'm sure, more precise information for customers that have commercial support. They will receive this information. But right now, we're totally supporting the community and the customers that are in this upgrade transition.
So we are at time. We've got 2 more questions that we wanted to get to. So really quickly, can you explain which of these features are available for 8.9 Community Edition versus commercial editions? I did try to call out during the developer features section which features were in Enterprise Edition. In general, when we're talking about branch and PR analysis and decoration, that's going to be commercial. And taint analysis is commercial. Most of the rest of the features you're going to find in Community Edition. We offer 95% of the value already in Community Edition. And then the final one was from Mark, who says, awesome upgrade features. I'll be running 8.9 next week. That is great to hear and a great note to end on. Thank you very much for attending our webinar. Please do take the survey at the end. Tell us how we did, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.